Hello, everybody. Welcome to the Tees Music Alliance On Point session on funding and resources. We're joined today by Louise Henry from Youth Music, Barnaby Duff from the PRS Foundation, and Dan Jones from PRS for Music. And we've structured this panel in such a way that we're planning to cover three basic areas, which are grant funding for young people, grant funding for grassroots and established artists, and then royalty generation from copyrighted works. So without any hesitation, we'll go into a little piece where everybody can introduce themselves. Louise, would you like to go first?
If I can get myself off mute, yes. Hiya, thank you for having us, Paul. My name's Louise. I'm Senior Grants Officer at Youth Music. So we're a funder that supports young people from 0 right the way up to 25 to make music, learn from music, and earn from music. And we do that by offering grants. There's kind of three strands: one for organisations for community music work, one for music industry businesses to employ 18 to 25-year-olds and provide those kind of much sought after entry-level jobs, and then one for young people, which is our most recent fund, our Next Gen fund, which hopefully we can chat about a little bit further over the course of the session.
Good stuff. Thank you very much. Barnaby.
Yeah, thanks, Paul. Hi, I'm Barnaby. I work for the PRS Foundation as a grants coordinator there. The PRS Foundation are the UK's leading charitable funder for new music and talent development across all genres. We can support organisations, we support music creators, ensembles from all backgrounds and across the UK. And we split our funds into two sort of segments, really. We've got the Next Step funds, which is for more emerging sort of artists at the beginning of their career. And then we've got what we call the sort of momentum funds when you're just about to kick on into mid-career and late career. So yeah, I'll delve into that a bit later. But we've got 11 schemes for very different sort of needs and skills-based things for different genres and backgrounds. So yeah, more on that later.
Excellent. Thank you very much. Dan.
Hi, everyone. My name is Dan. I work for an organisation called PRS Music, and I'm a writer relations manager there. If you don't know who PRS Music are, we're an organisation that represents the rights of songwriters, composers, and music publishers in the UK and around the world. We ensure that our members are paid whenever their musical compositions or songs are streamed, downloaded, broadcast on TV or radio, played in public or performed at venues. That's from like open mic nights to concert venues to music festivals. So simply put, if the music that you've written is being performed in public, we collect and pay you royalties. And if you're not a member of PRS or don't work with a music publisher, then you could be losing out on money that's due to you. So I'll be here to talk to you more about that.
Good stuff. And for those eagle-eyed viewers that will have noticed that Dan and Barnaby share three initials in their organisation's title. Obviously, the link is that the PRS Foundation is an independent foundation whose resources come from royalties or the interest from unclaimed royalties that are generated from PRS for Music. Is that correct?
Yeah, that's bang on, really. We've got a range of different partners that we work with in the music community as well, not just PRS. We've got PPL as well, and many other sort of names that you'd recognise. But that's essentially where we came from. We were founded in the year 2000 and have been distributing grant funding to musicians ever since.
Excellent, good stuff. So I'm going to go straight into some direct questions for each of you. That's okay. Start again with Louise. Louise, Youth Music recently opened its funding up to 18 to 25-year-olds, aimed at engaging them in various aspects of the music industry. Do you think that younger musicians are becoming more aware of a need to proactively engage with the industry rather than that old romantic concept of being discovered and signed whilst playing gigs?
And again, I think that's a really interesting question. So the fund that you're referring to is our Next Gen fund, where 18 to 25-year-olds can apply direct to youth music for up to £2,500 to develop a creative project of their choice. So that's not just for musicians, but for anyone within the industry, whether that's managers, promoters, within live music, broadcasting, journalism, whatever. I think a lot of young people are aware that the industry isn't going to come to them, especially if they're living outside of London. We did a big research project just before the pandemic hit, where we interviewed up to 1,300 young people aged between 18 and 25 who were kind of at the beginning of their careers in music across the board, and released this big report called the Blueprint for the Future report after that, and kind of found, well, we've got a real sense of the barriers that are stopping young people from earning money in music, and kind of location, postcode and economic background were the things that kind of came up as being those greatest barriers. So I think actually the onus should really sit with the music industries. What are they doing to proactively engage with young people, rather than just default into those usual routes of how they might discover artists. I mean, in our neck of the woods, Paul, look at Sam Fender. If his manager Owen hadn't walked into the lowlights in South Shields, he might never have been found. And obviously not everybody gets that lucky, but it shows that talent lives in quiet places. And, that's why BB's Introducing is brilliant, for showcasing people from all different types of places. And I get what you're saying, that there does need to be a kind of huge amount of proactiveness from individuals, but that also needs to be the opportunities around them for them to be able to access.
Yeah.
And the Incubator Fund, which is another one of our pots of money, which obviously Tees Music Alliance have sort of benefited from, is helping to create those opportunities in regions across the UK, which is brilliant. Something that we did find from that Blueprint report that I mentioned before is that there's a real DIY generation. I think there's always been a real DIY culture around music and music industries, of people kind of flogging away with, multiple jobs, and with music always kind of being the side hustle, if you will. And obviously, social media and being able to platform yourself is brilliant, but where it gets difficult, and we're hearing this from a lot of young people, is where, cost of living increases and responsibilities change and inflation goes up by 6% or whatever. And obviously often it's the creative stuff that gets dropped, because it's not the stuff that's making people money. So ultimately, I think, in answer to your question, young people do know the need to proactively engage, and things aren't going to come to them, but they often don't know how, or where to begin, or who to speak to, or where to go, especially if they're outside of London, or then again outside of bigger cities. So I think ultimately, that buck stops with the industry, be that us as a funder, be it labels, be it radio stations, wherever, where it's up to them to be opening doors and inviting people in. Otherwise, young people could be out there knocking forever. So I think it's a kind of meeting of both parties.
Excellent. Great stuff. And Barnaby, coming to you next. PRSF has a number of strands aimed at artists getting onto the music industry ladder as songwriters performing their own works. Is there an ideal stage in someone's career where they should consider it the right time to make an application to PRSF?
Yeah, I think there'd be, excuse me, I think there'd be many times within a musician's career where they might want to apply for grant funding. But I'd first of all kind of say, maybe you should do a year or 2 years, 3 years, building up a track record before you apply for funding first, just to demonstrate you're on that road, to tell us about your momentum as an artist. We refer a lot to the term tipping point. So when you come to us, you need to be on that trajectory where you can kind of demonstrate, I've done this, this, and this. All I need is an injection of support, and I can reach it to the next level. And you may have many tipping points within your career, like I say, that you can come back to us and address. But yeah, really good to kind of build up yourself a bit first before you apply. And like I say, we've got different kind of touch points, early career strands like Open Fund, which is up to £5,000 for individuals, up to 10 grand for organizations. And then we've got something called like the Momentum Fund, which is when you've got a small team around you, you're really making waves, and you can demonstrate that with maybe a debut EP, and then you're ready to kind of, get out there. And Sam Fender was supported by the Momentum Fund, as well as Little Sims, and loads of amazing people that we supported over the years that just pushed them over the edge, and they were able to come to us and demonstrate, this is my time, and we're able to express that. I think the beauty of grants funding is you're not beholden to anyone else's ideas. You're not at that point yet where you might be in a sort of formalized label agreement. So you might have a publishing deal or something. You might have a small label agreement in place. But the beauty of it is you come to us and be like, this is my vision for what I want to do. This is who I want to work with. They're interested. I've got in touch with them. This is their availability. You give us all those kind of details, names, rates, dates, and put them down on paper. And we go, hey, Paul's got a really good sort of plan in place. Let's support him, because it's really, he can show it's really going to happen for him with this injection of support. So that's what's really nice about it, that self-direction and that sort of freedom to do what you want with charitable money.
Excellent. And then Dan, something that's often overlooked by artists, especially in the early days of their career, is earning royalties from the music. And again, it's a similar question. Is there a most appropriate time to invest in a PRS membership, and how quickly could a songwriter start to see a return on their membership fees?
Yeah, that's a great question. I always advise people to join when they're confident they're going to get at least a joining fee back. So there is a one-off £100 fee to join PRS per songwriter. So if you're a solo songwriter, you're probably going to earn that back a lot quicker than someone who's in like a 4-piece band and you're splitting the songwriter in 4 ways. So there's a variety of ways you can earn royalties. The first way most people earn royalties is live. So if you're playing your own songs live, every time you perform your own songs live, you're going to earn royalties from that. From that open mic nights to small venues, regardless of whether you're paid, you played the show for free, you're still going to be due this member as a PRS member. So we have a few different schemes for like the smaller venues. We generally pay about £8 to £9 out per set list. So if you're playing like a dozen shows over a year, that's going to earn you the joining fee back. So I always say to people, just be confident you're going to earn at least the joining fee back. We don't try and encourage every single songwriter in the country to join, because if you've just got your music up on SoundCloud or YouTube and it's had a couple of dozen views, that's not going to earn you £100 back. You've kind of got to be realistic about what you're doing. We have kind of relaunched the joining part of the website recently, and if you go on it now, there is actually a kind of little filter where you can put in all your different activities, the radio plays, the amount of streams you get in, the amount of live shows you play in, and it does kind of tell you whether it's right for you to join or not yet. So I always advise people to have a look at that.
Excellent. And as you say, if you're gigging regularly, you can start to generate money. And I think that's probably one of the unknowns that people don't realise, that everywhere, or most places, well, everywhere where live music is performed should have a PRS license. That happens in the background with the organisations and the venues, and their license fees are really covering the royalties that are being paid out to artists that are playing. So if you're playing a gig in a pub, the license fee is already paid, and you want your chunk of that license fee, really, don't you? So yeah, it is one of the best kept secrets, I think, when people's first starting out.
Yeah, I try and do my best to amplify that and let people know. But I do speak to, I've spoken to some Momentum winning bands from up in the Northeast, and that's been completely news to them as well, where they've been like touring for 5 years, playing some massive venues. So I've got them to go in and put in as many claims as possible to make sure they're not going to lose out on any royalties. And like I said, that's probably the first thing you do as an artist or band. You might start playing live, and every time you play your own songs, you can be earning money from us. So it's a bit of a no-brainer, really. Absolutely,
good stuff. And one for each of you in turn. Feel free to jump in. Does any of you have a particular top tip for how musicians should engage with your organisations? I'll tell you what we could do, unless anybody was wanting to jump in, we could probably let you sort of think those over, mull and cogitate, and then we'll come back to those at the end. So we've prepared a couple of kind of provocations just to sort of play a little bit of devil's advocate as well, things that we hear quite regularly. One for the two funders and the other one for connected to royalties. In terms of funding, we always hear no point in applying for funding. Nobody from round here ever gets it. And round here in our particular neck of the woods is the Tees Valley in the northeast. But I'm sure round here equally applies anywhere else in the country. I think it's that kind of nobody will give funding to a local artist kind of attitude. Louise or Barnaby, anything that you want to kind of come to counter that?
Yeah.
I mean, oh, sorry, you go ahead, Louise.
Are you sure?
Yeah,
so we're both just like, no.
Good, that's what we want.
If we're talking about round here, I'd say Shy Ben's getting out, which
exactly
northeast is if you don't ask, you don't get.
Yeah.
So at Youth Music, the way that it works at Youth Music is we have a series of regional pots. So for every single round of funding that we have for all of our various funds, we're constantly looking at what we call portfolio balancing. So that just means sort of investing an equitable amount in each place. So we've heard it before, we'll go, oh, it's just all about London. And it's like, well, 78-ish% of our investment goes outside of London. So that's just not true. Having said that, if you don't apply, you're not going to get funded. So, for example, in the first round of our Next Gen, I'm not particularly proud to say this, but it's the truth. In the first round of our Next Gen fund, we had over 300 applications and only 3 came from the northeast. So, like I say, if you don't ask, you don't get. But having said that, it's not really about no one getting funded. It's actually about why aren't people applying in the first place, or why don't people feel like they can apply? And so I think the questions that we need to ask as a funder, and people need to be asking like in their communities, is first off, do people know that the funding exists? And that's my responsibility, your responsibility. If you're working with young people, it's a collective responsibility to make sure that the people who can access the funding, for starters, know it exists. It's a much more common practice, I think, in other art forms, dance, theatre, whatever, to look for funding in a way that I don't think it's as common practice in music, or people don't necessarily realise that it's there. The second thing is, do they know they're eligible? In which case, come and speak to your funder. We don't live in these funny little glass houses. And then do you know how? Do you know how to apply? And do you know what the process is? And I think there's a huge problem with the need to demystify funding and demystify the funding landscape. And I feel really strongly about this, and it's something that Youth Music are working at kind of constantly. And I think that means being transparent about the process. If you're not successful, well, what were the how many applications did we receive? What was the success rate? And being honest about that. Being honest about what it is exactly that we're looking for, so that you're not wasting people's times, making sure that the application process is accessible as possible. For a lot of our funds now, you can apply via video. I've had a few people talk to me and say, I don't know how to write an application, or, I've got dyslexia, or I've never done anything like this before. And I'll say, well, if you can articulate yourself like you've just articulated to me on camera, then there's your application, it's done. If the idea is there, then you're already halfway there. So I think, it's on us to give people a chance. And like I say, we're revising our processes a lot now. So for the Next Gen Fund and for the Incubator Fund, which are probably the two most relevant ones for the conversation we're having today, people can ring up and have a conversation with me, have a conversation with somebody else in the grants team, and just throw their ideas out there. There's obviously so much guidance out there around applying for funding. But I suppose going back to your question before of a piece of advice for people, speak to your funder. Our inboxes are there. My job is quite literally to support people through that funding process, and so make the most of those contacts. And if you don't know, ask. Come and speak to Paul. Come and speak to, if you're in the Northeast, Generator and the equivalent organisations up and down the country. who can put you in touch with the right people. But we are there to help. We're not just gatekeepers.
Excellent. And you even
Sorry, TED Talk over.
even managed to squeeze your top tip in there as well. So 2 birds with 1 stone. So yeah, and Barnaby.
Oh man, I mean, yeah, just want to just echo Louise and like almost, yeah, exactly what she's been saying. Basically, I can agree more. Yeah, it is. We do have mechanisms in place internally to make sure that we fund regionally, and we get so many applications in from London, whatever reason that may be, but we really try and focus our support out and have a really sort of equitable, fair regional spread across the UK, and we do that by using advisors, assessors as well, that we sort of freelance in, that don't just come from the London, that understand your scene from these regional spaces, understand your voice, where you're coming from and your background, hopefully as well. So yeah, don't ask, don't get. You miss 100% of the shots you don't take, in Michael Jordan's words. Just go for it. It might not happen for you first time. It won't. In fact, it probably won't. It doesn't for anyone. So second, third time, get your feedback, talk to us. And like I say, you can be a really good musician, but what we need is basically like and to put it in a really sort of boring way, like an audit trail of what you're asking for. So we need that that information from you, like almost like an extension, like a receipt, basically, of what you're going to spend it on. So give us the names of people you're working with, the prospective dates, show us that you've spoken to these people, emailed them, got on the phone to them, and why you want to use them, how they will take you to the next level, what they worked on before. All this information is really useful to understand your journey and how you want to get to that end point. But just go for it, really. And yeah, echoing the sentiments of Louise, really, and everything that she said.
Great stuff. And there are many kind of cliches that you can kind of throw around as well. What's the one that the lottery always do? You've got to be in it to win it. It's if you don't make the applications, you're 100% guaranteed not to get any funding. So, and it is one of those things where you do learn it. And as you say, Barnaby, you may not get your first one, but you can get feedback and you can learn and go on to make future successful applications. And again, that's something that we do not as often as we'd like to, because we don't seem to find as many people having the confidence. And I think confidence is a big thing that we need to kind of build. And as Louise said, it's about demystifying, getting funding, and this loosely comes under the terms of arts funding. It's always seen as the kind of the domain of the sort of the elites and the big organizations, and it's not the case. There's probably a lot more success with smaller grants than there is with those larger ones.
Yeah, and just to say, like Louise was saying, we're desperate for applications from the Northeast and Deep Valley as well. It's an area that we don't receive enough submissions from. So if it looks like we're not funding as many there, it's simply because we just don't have any coming through. So just to urge anyone from those areas thinking about applying to do that.
I'd also just jump in and say, if you feel like you've got a perspective to offer to a funder, they probably want to hear from you. As Barnaby said, we use both PRSF and Youth Music. We'll have I'm not going to go through people can ask if they want to get in touch and ask how it works, but when applications come through to us, they don't just come straight to me or straight to Barnaby or straight to our kind of office as such. We have a pool of assessors that we use and have assessed for help musicians, and Barnaby's assessed for Youth Music, but we also at Youth Music have a pool of young people aged between 18 and 25 who assess applications for us as well. And so if you feel like you could bring your perspective from that end, then definitely get in touch with funders. But also, if we're not in a community, we don't always necessarily know what it needs. And so if you feel like you've got a perspective that you can bring to, I can speak for Youth Music, then talk to us. If you feel like people in your region aren't being supported adequately, like talk to us. Like would really like to get that feedback and hear from you. So I don't really know who I'm talking to here. I'm just kind of like throwing it out into the ether. But I think, you know, it's that shy Ben's getting out mentality of ask questions, find out more, like build relationships with people.
And the worst thing that can happen is that somebody might say, no. you're not quite ready. No one's going to confiscate your guitar and say you can never sing a song again. It's about come back to us when you're a little bit more ready, or try this, try that. Yeah, it's not the end of the world getting turned down, but at the same time, talking to funders can move you in so many different directions and make you feel a lot more positive. Yeah, and provocation number 2, which is probably aimed at, well, almost certainly aimed at Dan. And you've partly answered this, but I think it's worth re-emphasising. You know, why pay 100 quid up front just to be able to claim a few more quid back in royalties? There's probably more money putting a I was going to say an ashtray on the door. They don't have ashtrays anymore, do they? Putting a pint glass on the door and collecting money for people to see me play live. And underlying that is that unsigned artists can't really earn money from PRS.
Yeah. So, yeah, I think I have kind of answered that a bit already, but all kind of members of PRS are treated the same. So everyone gets the same amount of royalties if they're playing the same type of show, the same like radio play at the same time of day, same amount of streams. So if you're an unsigned artist or whether you're signed up to like a major label, it doesn't make any difference. You're still going to get the money that's due to you. It is an investment, so you've got to weigh up, are you going to earn that back? But if you are playing lots of live shows, and we talked about BBC introducing, if you're getting introducing plays, if you're getting a significant amount of streams, then you're soon going to repay that joining fee, and all you're going to do from that day forward is kind of earn more and more money, and it's a one-off fee for the rest of your life. So it's not an annual recurring fee. You're just going to earn every year. And that kind of goes back to the question you asked earlier about a top tip. Top tip, I say, is when people join is, some people join and that's all they do. They think, oh, I finally signed up with PRS. Everyone's telling me to join PRS. I've done it. And then no money comes through to them because they don't do the things they need to do. You need to be proactive. You need to register all your songs with us. If you don't tell us the songs you've written, then we can't pay you. We get reporting from like the BBC, from Spotify, from ITV when your music is used. But if we don't have your songs registered on our database, then we can't pay you money. Likewise, live is kind of the only kind of income source where the onus is more on the members to tell us when they're playing shows, because simply put, we don't know the set list of every single gig up and down the country. So every time you play a live show, you can log it on our website. It's like a 2-minute process where you just tell us the date, the venue, your set list, and then you'll receive royalties every time you do that. So joining PRS is great, but that by no means is the end of the journey. You do kind of need to be proactive and make sure you're registering all your songs with us, you're registering your gigs with us. 9 times out of 10, the answer to people's questions are, oh, I wasn't paid for this. I'll look it up, and it's because they haven't registered the song, or they registered it 2 years after it was released, or they haven't told us about any of the gigs they played. If you're published, so you work with like a music publishers, it's usually your publisher's responsibility to do that. So make sure your publisher knows that you're a member of PRS and what your membership number is, and make sure you're informing your publisher every time you write a song, every time you put a new song up on the streaming services, and every time you play a live show.
Excellent. And it literally is a case of whenever you play or you get a radio play, or, you know, the big time if you get on the telly, larger festivals, you know, every time you play and you are a member of PRS, you know, you're entitled to some money. It's not like you've got to make a pitch and ask PRS if they will consider paying you. You are entitled by virtue of your membership and the originality and the copyright on your songs.
Yeah, exactly. And when you join, you assign certain, it's quite boring, but I won't go into it, but you assign certain rights to us where you're essentially saying we have to collect this money. So you're not going to get in trouble from festivals or the BBC. We're not going to go, oh, this person says you were played, give us this money. It's like you legally due this money. They paid us the money, and we want to distribute it to you.
Yeah, absolutely. And I can testify from the other side that where we've had some kind of admin error on our returns when we are putting our license declaration back in. We'll get a query from PRS saying, this band reckon they played that gig on that night, and we'll look back and say, oh yeah, we've missed them off, and that squares the circle. So there's an awful lot of work goes on behind the scenes on behalf of members. And again, PRS is one of those organisations where people like yourself actually go out into the field and proactively meet their members and hook up and talk to them, advise them, etc. So you're not just getting a kind of an anonymous website kind of service. There are real people behind it that are looking after the needs of the members.
Yeah, exactly. So I'm based in Manchester, so I'm not London based, and I travel the north of England speaking to anybody that will speak to me about PRS, helping them with like grant funding, but also mainly talking to them about PRS and making sure they maximize their membership.
Good stuff. Great. I mean, that's been a really great session. I hope that people that are watching this will get a lot out of it. And I think that the thing that's coming across certainly to me is that none of you represent faceless organisations that are really difficult to contact and don't actually want to help people. Everybody is in the business of helping people that are trying to make a success for themselves through their music. So and I think people should take that away, that all of the organisations and a whole load of others that aren't represented here are approachable, and people just need to kind of pluck up the courage, if that's not the wrong phrase, just to make contact. But everybody's got email contacts on websites. Everybody's got contact sheets, and it's not nobody's hiding in cupboards not wanting to talk to people. Everybody's approachable, and the longest journey starts with the shortest step, as somebody very wise once said. Does anybody want to just chip in any kind of last minute thoughts just before we round this off? Not compulsory, but I mean, there's been an awful lot of really useful nuggets have kind of come out today, and it's been excellent. So if anybody's got any last minute kind of thoughts they want to throw in, no, that's fine. So in that case, if I can just thank the three of you for attending this. Obviously, we're doing it online in really strange circumstances still. So I thank you for your time and your efforts to make this.